I'd like to talk about drum layering and how I do that a lot. So here is the loop I'm working with, and then I will break it down. So a lot of times I'll have two main drum layers. I have like a clean layer, which for this example sounds like this. And then I'll have like a texture layer, which a lot of times vinyl drum samples work really well for this because they've got this crackle and kind of crunch to them. And a lot of times they don't have a lot of bass frequencies in them, which is good for layering. So that's like my texture layer. And I think it's important when you're layering drums to be using complementary sounds. So if, in my case, my clean kick, that's going to be like providing all of the low end punch to the sound, and the texture kick, which is this final kick sample, is going to be providing like the crunch and the higher end air and kind of atmosphere. And the same thing with the snare. The layer, like the clean layer, that's going to be providing all the punch, and the texture layer is going to be providing some air and texture. It's interesting to do that because you can really change the way a drum sample sounds if you add a different texture layer to it. And then a lot of times I'll add some kind of hit, every other snared hit, like that. I've taken the attack away from it, so there's no transient on it. It's kind of just like a whoosh, like an air whoosh. That it's pretty subtle, but it does add a little bit. Just so it's not the same sound over and over again, Then I'll do a, hi-hat layer. Texture. So it's just a lot of grain and like, I don't know. Adds a little more life to the hi-hat. Then usually I'll have some kind of clap or snap to get like a high-end pop. And for this one, I've automated the reverb to come in every other snap. Just for the same reason, just like a variation that keeps the sounds moving and interesting, not as, robotic and repetitive, which sometimes you want that, but sometimes not. Then I'll usually add like a reverse snare drum every other snare, every couple, it depends on the song, but just it can make the snare sound bigger if there's a little reverse sound right before it. Put that real low in the mix. You might not have even been able to hear it unless you had headphones on. And then a lot of times I'll make a big explosive reverb snare at the end of a phrase, or in this example, at the every 4 hits, there's this. It's just 100% wet reverb sound. So I just put a reverb on a snare, set it to 100% wet, and it just cuts off at the end. So again, all of it together sounds like this. Here's just the texture layer. Here's just the clean layer. And then together. And so I've got all the clean drums going to their own bus. I've got all the texture drums going to their own bus. So for the texture layer, I'll cut the subs out. I'll compress it. And then I'll put another compressor and set the sidechain to the clean drum bus, which is, as I mentioned earlier, the drum layer that's providing all of the actual punch and like meat of the drum sound. So the texture layer, I like to sidechain to the clean layer, and you can get some interesting like pumping effects if you mess with that. Yeah, and then I bus both of those, the clean layer and the texture layer, to their own drum bus, which in this example I've labeled as drums all, in case you wanted to treat all of, just all of the drums at once. And then, as I usually do, I set up a bus send of all the drums to a separate bus, which I use for parallel drum compression. So super just smashed, over compressed, and then I just mix that in to the sound. So that channel sounds like this. That's with the compressor off. Yeah, this plugin is so good for parallel drum bus compression. The Devilock by Sound Toys. Yeah. Then I just kind of mix that in. Kind of just provides I don't know, it's a good way to get like a compressed drum sound without destroying your drums. So that's it. So in context, I'll just play it, and then I'll mute the texture layer and bring it back in, and you could see if it sounds like it makes a difference to you. Sometimes you want just that super clean sound, but sometimes you want to have more texture in the drum sounds and more kind of interest in the sound, I guess. More, I don't know how else to say it, texture. So, yeah, I don't do this in every project, but a lot of times it's fun to mess with.